You see these watermarks right here? These watermarks tells me that at some point in time since this house was built, which this house was built in 2019, we had a water leak from this here drain. And when that drain leaked, we didn't catch it soon enough, it made watermarks in our sink basin. So I'm going to tell you something that I do now in my newer homes is now in our newer homes that we build, they now are selling rubber pans that you can put in here. So the rubber pan would then catch any water that goes into these basins, and it would give you the ability not to ruin a cabinet, not to mess up a cabinet and make it look like crap. My guys should have caught that whenever they were doing the rehab and done something different with that, whether they had to put something down to cover it up, they should have looked better. But they didn't, and we won't even go there. So let's just talk about what do we do down here. So number one, I would look at these. These fittings have a tendency to leak, okay? I would run some water in them, and we just ran some water a second ago, but I'll just turn it on and let it run while we're talking. So we got that water running. I'm down here, and I can see it running through this pipe right here. I would feel here to see if I feel any water. I'd feel there. I'd feel each one of these fittings to verify that we have no water leaking from any of them, okay? So we don't have any water leaking. I have no drips right there. What is a plumber going to do any more than that as far as our drainage system on his sink goes? Nothing. There's nothing to do. You know, is he going to go in and retighten it? I would retighten it. What happens if you go on there and it's not leaking and you tighten it up and you break a thread and you don't recognize that you break a thread? Then 2 months later you got a small drip. Now you got another problem you got to deal with on something that you created because you tightened up something that didn't need to be tightened. The next thing I would do is we got a dishwasher line here. I would feel that dishwasher line. I would make sure that I don't have any leaks there. I got my hot and cold over here with the PEX. I would feel that right there. Make sure I don't have any leaks. Now maybe you got a leak and it's visual and you can see it. Okay, you know it's leaking then. Maybe if that was leaking, I might take a wrench and try and tighten it up a little bit. Maybe if it's leaking and you see that it's leaking, you may just want to call a professional plumber and let them come fix it for you. That's fine too. But do I need to hire a professional plumber to come in here and look at that just to tell me that it's leaking and he needs to fix it? I don't necessarily need to do that. I can have my wife do that and look at it and do the diagnostic for me. And she can do every bit that I can do as a professional plumber on her own. She don't even need me to do that. So it's not a matter of having to have a professional come look at that and see if it's got a leak. You might pull your refrigerator. I don't have water running to this refrigerator, but if you got a refrigerator that's got water running to it, it's as simple as grabbing the ends of it, pulling it back, taking a flashlight, look behind it. Do you see any water residue? If you don't see water, it's not leaking. What else is the plumber going to do but tell you, I didn't find any leaks, I didn't find anything inconsistent with it, I didn't have anything. So let's move on. What else is a plumber going to look at? If I was a plumber, I would look at your water heater. So I would come in, our water heater's in this little closet right here. So I would look at my water heater. I want to make sure I don't have any leaks on my pop-off valve right here. So it's coming from here. So this is designed if you get excessive water pressure. Let's say your water heater goes rogue, your elements stay on, the thermostat doesn't shut them off, it builds up to the point that the water is boiling. If the water is boiling in there, what's going to happen is it's going to wind up building up a lot of pressure that could blow up a tank. So you would know that long before it happens, chances are. I don't know of anybody whose tanks have blown up. Now, if somebody stops this up, they could do that, but you never stop it up. You always want it to run. So I would check that out. I would make sure that your pop-off valve's doing good. I would make sure there's no water in here. I would also look in the drain pan and make sure I don't see any water anywhere in the drain pan, because when a water heater starts to leak, it leaks a little bit from the center. And when it starts leaking in the center, you'll have a little bit of water in the bottom. This water right here would then run out from here outside. So where we park the cars, or where the tenants park, that water line comes out right there. So they would notice that when they come home from work. They would notice that there's water coming out of their wall that ain't supposed to be there. And they would notify us and we would do it. But you can do this as a homeowner. You can look and say, okay, my pan is dry. I know that I don't have any issues. So another thing I would like to do is I would like to look at my water heater and I would like to see how old my water heater is. So I would look at my data tag and I would find my date code on my data tag. You might look at the manufacturer. This is an A.O. Smith. These first two numbers right there may be the date code. They usually have it on everything on the serial number. So this is a 2018 water heater. I know I put it in 2019 because that's when I built the house. So you may have to look all over the water heater to find a date code somewhere, but find a date code. Let's say your water heater is 10 years old. And if I had a water heater that was 10 years old, I would then start contemplating replacing that water heater, even if it's not leaking. When do you want to replace your water heater? You want to replace your water heater before it breaks. I can tell you when you start getting to 8 years, when you start getting to 10 years, replace your water heater. Even if it's not leaking, replace it because you don't want it to break. If it breaks in your house, this water heater here is probably $400. I'll put a new water heater in here for $400. But let's say this water heater busts. I got concrete floors, so it's not that it's going to ruin my floors, but if you don't have concrete floors, maybe you're dealing with $5,000, maybe $10,000 worth of repair work on your flooring. And I have seen house after house after house that does that. Let's say it breaks, I'm not here, and it floods the house. All right, I'm replacing drywall because the drywall absorbs the water. The floor base absorbs the water. I'm replacing floor base. I'm replacing all kind of stuff that I wouldn't have to replace because I was too cheap to spend $500 because I wanted to get one additional year out of my water heater. I'm going to view my water heater from a standpoint of saying when it breaks, it does a lot of damage. If my air conditioner breaks, does it do a lot of damage? No. I mean, it just breaks. I'm hot or I'm cold. It doesn't necessarily do a lot of damage. When a water heater breaks and floods your house, it is one of the most prone appliances in your home that could do a tremendous amount of damage. So you don't want to wait for that tank to bust to replace it. You want to replace that tank before it bursts.